right, what is up, comic book fans, fantasy fans? As always, I'm Shay from the channel Zachary Shay, narrator of The Gallant by Janie Wirtz, avid fantasy book, sci-fi, comic book fans. And today I'm going to talk about a series that is very near and dear to my heart, that is also very, very, very cursed. This is one of my favorite comic book properties, probably of all time. If I had to make a top 10 list, I don't see any world where this is not in the top 10. It is probably my second favorite comic book venture by Alan Moore, first being Swamp Thing. I would probably put his prose work over this, though, but this is very high on my Alan Moore reading. And if you've noticed, Alan Moore's name does not appear on this book, even though his name would be a big selling point for it. There was some deal involved where they're not allowed to use his name for any of his work. He is only credited as the author. He did not want his name on anything printed by Marvel. He also hates DC, but with Marvel, it's a bit more, there's a lot of vitriol there. There's a lot of hatred there. But what makes this stand out is one of my favorite comics of all time. This is Miracleman by Alan Moore. This is magnificent. I personally think that this is a better work than Watchmen. Honestly, I think books like The Boys owes a lot to this, though this is a lot better than The Boys. This is a very mature look at what would superheroes look like if they were in our world. You have the main character, Miracleman, who is a lot like Shazam from DC Comics. He says this magic word, and I forget what it's called. It's like atomic spelled backwards. Makota? What does he say? What's the magic word? It's going to bother me if I don't figure it out. Komoda. The magic word is Komoda. It's atomic spelled backwards. He says the magical word, he becomes Miracleman. But in the modern day, he is a washed up, middle-aged man who has forgotten his magic word, and during a terrorist attack he remembers the magic word and he becomes Miracleman once again. And there's so many things that ensue. It really takes a character in a similar vein to Captain Marvel or Shazam or whatever you want to call him, Billy Batson, and reimagines him in the real world. This is, in my opinion, the best exploration of a dark Superman, because it doesn't just try to be edgy Superman. It's more of like, how do you, as a god amongst men, ensure humanity's safety while also preserving their free will? And there's no way to do either one entirely. You have to draw that line somewhere. And a lot of his troubles, Miracleman's troubles, is where to draw that line between preserving humanity's free will but also preserving their lives. And this is not concerned. This book is not concerned with examining a superhero. This is a character that wears a superhero costume and has superhero-like exploits, but at the end of the day, this is a god. This is a god. This is not a superhero. This is a being that, because of his power, he was once human, but because of his power, he is no longer able to understand what it means to be human anymore. I love Clark Kent. Clark Kent's humanity is what makes him Clark Kent. This is not Clark Kent. This is the Superman disassociated from reality. This is Dr. Manhattan in similar vein. Dr. Manhattan, if he decided to rule over humanity in the end instead of just distancing himself from humanity. And spoiler alert, we're going to get into spoilers for deeper into this omnibus, though I'm still keeping it somewhat vague in case you want to read, but I'm just talking about, what this story entails and how it was continued on in these works. So, Miracleman, upon discovering the truth behind his turns out all the wacky, zany adventures he went on as a kid were not real, that they were government simulations, and that his body that he goes into when he says the magic word was created by the government, and that he was a government experiment, and that, his protege, Kid Miracleman, has gone insane, and there's the big battle of London, tons of death, very dark, one of the darkest things I've ever read in comics. And at that point, that is a tipping point for Miracleman, where he's like, no, I need to rule over humanity. And that's what he does. And, the story could have ended there and it would have been perfect. would have been great, but a very talented author, but a very sick man gave us 2 more stories of a planned trilogy. And this is where I get into why this story is cursed. Neil Gaiman told Marvel, or I believe this was under another property at the time, but he told the owner of this book, like, hey, I want to do a trilogy. I want to do Golden Age, Silver Age, Dark Age, and it will show the hubris and the fall. So we see the building of Olympus here. Neil Gaiman was concerned with showing the era where these Olympians, these godlike beings rule, and then also the downfall of Olympus. And there's going to be a story, Golden Age, which is in the prime of Miracleman's rulership. Silver Age, which examines this ruler reign. This examines Miracleman's reign under his other protege, not Kid Miracleman, but young Miracleman, as he observes. He basically wakes up in this reality that Miracleman has made for himself, and he's just kind of at a loss. Why are we ruling over them as gods? When did this ever become the status quo? And there's a planned third one, Dark Age, which examines Miracleman after his reign has ended hundreds of years later, and he's traveling this wasteland. Think Oedipus at Colossus, it's after the fall of the king type thing. And we never got that because news broke that Neil Gaiman is a sick, sick bastard before the 3rd volume came out. Why? Part of me wishes that Mark Buckingham could just do his best with the art and wrap up the story himself. Like if Mark Buckingham could just finish it and Neil Gaiman could just be out of here. But Mark Buckingham would probably say no to that. I know that. Or if Alan Moore Alan Moore would never come back to finish it ever. He did give Neil Gaiman the thumbs up to write more of these. But yeah, Golden Age was it honestly was a bunch of vignettes. This was less of a beginning, middle, and end story in the way the original Alan Moore run was. And this had a lot of vignette-style stories that imagined life under the reign of Miracleman and these other godlike beings, and showed what this life in this utopia would look like. And, because a true utopia would not make for interesting stories, it is more of a dystopia. And it was a ton of fun. Really great story. But where I think this era really excelled is Silver Age, because you take this flawed dystopia and you have a character, young Miracleman, who perished before any of these stories, but he appears in flashbacks and stuff. They find a way to put his mind and soul into a new body that they've created. And I think this is part of me thinks Miracleman deep down knows that he's messed up and he wants to be held accountable. Sorry, y'all, I accidentally filmed beyond my storage capabilities. But part of me believes that Miracleman brought young Miracleman back because he wanted to be held accountable for this sort of dystopia he created. I don't remember how much I talked about these. Anyway, but the reason I think this series is cursed is because, this pretty standalone could have ended here, but this was a great addition. I love these vignettes. Could have ended here. This would have just been a fun companion piece. This ends on a cliffhanger. Young Miracleman's story ends on a cliffhanger. In fact, at the very end, to be continued in Dark Age, except it won't because Neil Gaiman is gross. Yeah, so one of my favorite stories in comics is absolutely cursed. And I can't even delude myself like with the King Killer Chronicles or the Gentleman Bastard sequence and just be like, oh, well, maybe it'll be finished someday. I do think the Gentleman Bastard sequence will be finished someday. But I can't even delude myself into thinking this will be finished because I don't even want it to be finished by Neil Gaiman. That dude is a sicko. I would love for Mark Buckingham to finish the trilogy somehow, to just do the art and find somebody else to write it. I'm sure there's plenty of people who could. Tom King would kill it. Who else? Rom V. I mean, there are a ton of talented writers, but they probably wouldn't want to pick up the mantle after everything that's gone down and all the lore related to this series. It was actually canceled after Golden Age and then just brought back for Silver Age recently. Right as the news was dropping, Silver Age came out, and then boom, we're not getting Dark Age. Oh man, it's so tragic. It honestly makes me so mad when I think about it. But, like, obviously, yeah, take the book away from Neil Gaiman. He doesn't deserve it. He's sick. He's gross. But, like, damn, man. Like, it was such a good series. And I really wish that I didn't enjoy these as much as I do. That way I could just convince myself that this is the only narrative. But I do think that these actually add and build upon Alan Moore's story in a really excellent way. And Alan Moore actually endorsed Neil Gaiman's writing of Miracleman. I know he'll never come back and do more. I would be great to have Dark Age, to have this story of Miracleman wandering in this wasteland after his dystopian has fallen and thinking about the ramifications of his actions. Oedipus of Colonus. That would have been really, really cool. And I would have loved to see how Buckingham and author examined these things. But alas, this is not the world we live in. But yeah, I definitely think if you love The Boys, if you love Watchmen, if you love the idea of an evil Superman, though this is a little bit more nuanced than evil Superman, I think you should definitely check out Miracleman by Alan Moore. Yeah. And if you've read any comics that you think I should check out, if you've read Miracleman and loved it and want to leave a comment, be sure to comment down below. And as always, stay safe, guys. Peace.